بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. يا ربنا أنت الخالق وأنت المالك وأنت الرازق، والأمور كلها ترجع إليك، فنعتمد عليك ونتوجه إليك ونتوب إليك واستغفرك ونصلي ونسلم على الذي أرسلته إلينا. أما بعد, we wanted to focus on the psychology of Covid-19, the psychology which we see is at the level of society and at the level of individuals. And that is that we were all of a sudden hit with a crisis situation, and rather than pushing us into a mode of solidarity, you began to see that a number of people retreated into themselves. And this is unfortunate, but the approach that the society has taken has been that you see that people, one of the first things that people did was they made sure that they went and they bought firearms, to the point where in some places, you know, the sales of firearms is not even possible anymore because whatever was there for distribution in the marketplace is gone. The same thing was reported with ammo. And so rather than people coming together and trying to figure out how to organize their communities to take care of the most vulnerable, there was this whole rush of everyone moving into a self-preservation mode based on projections and presumptions. Like, you know, some communities really haven't been hit dead on to the point where they're seeing bodies drop in the street, like a place like Ecuador and other places, as far as what has been reported. But the tendency has been division and isolation. And so even within families have moved into that mode of you stay in your place and I stay in my place. And there's been many cases that are being reported now of situations that have been somewhat tragic on an emotional level, where someone in the family may get COVID and then there's no space for them to be, and everyone is looking with the eye of suspicion of, you know, am I going to catch it from you? Don't get close to me. That's what the psychology of this situation has brought, that everyone is focused on their own individual survival, whatever that means. Even if you look at what was taking place, and this is extremely problematic if it were to be a description of the future, but this took place early on when people were going to the stores and they were shopping, the way that people began to assault each other, or they just began to shop for particular items. They weren't even concerned with anyone else. Like, some people will come in and take 10 items of this or that. You know, it's a problem. It's a problem, because if that's the psychology that we're going to have to deal with this situation, then it's going to be a straight out clash between people. You know, that's the bottom line. Even governments began to shut down and not really be in a cooperative mode. You know, even though the situation demands solidarity and cooperation and care for each other in order to be able to move forward, you still see that the tendency has been the same old greedy capitalist, you know, and not that every aspect of capitalism is bad, but it's been about me gaining, and it doesn't matter if others lose. And that even it extends to the point of, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. I'll have my religious service regardless of whether it has an impact of people. I'll have my, you know, store open in this way regardless of whether it has an impact of people. You know, even within the religious realm, you see that it parallels sometimes even the realm of the marketplace. The concern for the well-being of others is just not there. It's very worrisome. Today there was a report that hedge funds basically are run by what you call venture capitalists. Venture capitalists, they're like vultures. They wait and they see, they're like strong people They wait and they see where there's weakness at, and then they come in and they make a power move economically. So venture capitalists are responsible for a lot of economic collapse throughout the world, and they're really the ones behind the scenes that make a lot of power moves. So these hedge funds, they operate on that level. Like, they look to see, how they can benefit from other people's losses, whether it's in real estate or, any other, whether it's, devaluing currency, whatever it may be. And so recently there was a report that the hedge funds are taking government money. I believe it was Bloomberg. I put it on my Facebook page, and they're claiming to be small businesses. And so, we see that that's the situation, that still we didn't learn anything from the 2008 crash. And the situation that we're facing is like 50 times worse than the 2008 economic crash. It is probably worse than a lot of situations that we've confronted. It's a lot different than the Great Depression because there's technology, there's lessons that were learned, but it's not going to be a smooth ride. And so even with all of this, you find that the same types of practices are still being allowed in this society. And so we have to, and I mentioned this before, we have to make sure that our conversations, because our conversations in social media is something that is considered a public sphere now. You can be accountable for what you say. And so our conversations have to be about wanting solidarity, and wanting civil liberties, and wanting, somewhat prosperity. But we have to make sure that we're voicing that there has to be a concern for the general society and people, and that's the type of attitude that we have to have. As long as everyone is stuck in their world and doing their own thing, that type of stuff can kick off. That type of practice can kick off because, the general conversations of people are monitored. So when you poll the society, so to speak, nobody's really concerned with that. And so at the end of the day, that affects your grandmother, that affects your neighbor, that affects me, that affects you, because those people are taking government monies to make sure they stay afloat and make sure that they're okay, and they're emptying out the public coffers while millions of people are in survival mode. And so that's something that we have to spread, the idea of cooperation, solidarity, and care. And we have to make sure that we're talking about that in light of where the general masses are, the general people. If we don't have that type of conversation, if that doesn't come from the so-called religious communities, then where is it going to come from? It's sad when you see that, some of the people that are of a socialist orientation and may not believe in God have more religious foundation when it comes to the issue of talking about what should be done in these situations as far as the human being is concerned, than people that are claiming religiosity, which central to religion is not only the worship of God, but is also, the preservation of the human being. So that's a big fundamental part of religion. In Islam, we have the preservation of life and the preservation of human dignity. These are two objectives of religious practice: the preservation of life and the preservation of human dignity. And the cultivation of life, meaning that everything that cultivates life is something that's encouraged, and the cultivation that human dignity be upheld, and that human dignity be something that's celebrated in practice. And so you find Islam encourages that. It's not just the issue of preservation of life, like the way, for instance, the anti-abortionists try to take the approach that they take, but it's more than that. It's also looking at the conditions of life, the conditions which allow life to be. And so that should be our discourse. Our approach to this should be that we're concerned with the direction that this is taking, because there's not enough being done to support the general population of people. There's too much that's going on that's supporting the ultra rich, and there's not enough that is being done with regard to human dignity, with regard to human dignity. So what that you have some jobs that will exist, like a McDonald's job or, a Walmart job, but you can't maintain human dignity on those types of jobs. And these are the types of things that we're going to face. Maintaining human dignity is not going to come with getting a check for 1,200 or 1,500. That maybe is going to come sometime in September. Maybe it may not come. While in the meantime, there's been months of people struggling to try to figure out how to make ends meet. And in the meantime, everything else is getting bailed out with $1 trillion a day. And then what the general masses are thrown is $1,500, which basically was the tax credit that was taken away from them about two tax terms ago. And so those things don't uphold dignity. But as long as the people, and I end on this note, as long as the people have that mindset of it's okay, I don't want to be involved. As long as our conversations are silly conversations, then that's what we get at the end of the day. That's what we get, because the general tendency of this society is not to take care of the people. The general tendency, especially of this administration, is about taking care of the ultra rich. That's where this administration is at. And just like some politicians have said, we don't want to give the American public too much because it's going to discourage people from working, as though Americans don't work more than any other people on the planet as far as their workplace is concerned. When you start talking about these developed countries, I would say that maybe undocumented labor even here works at a level that is problematic, but we work. So the situation at the end of the day is that, what is your conversation going to be? How are you going to influence social media? Pay attention to what's going on. Pay attention to what's going on, because social media is the realm where public opinion is being formed, and people are looking to social media and they're taking ideas from it. So our conversation has to be about cooperation, solidarity, care for others, right? And how can that be achieved practically in our local communities? From local government to local religious organizations to neighborhood committees. How can we create an environment in which people feel safe, they feel secure, they feel like their needs, are being met? Assalamu alaikum.